So I just saw Mickey 17, let's go ahead and talk about it. This was a movie that I was really excited about. You know, we've got a great director in Bong Joon-Ho. He's got a pretty good track record. I love Robert Pattinson. The trailers looked interesting. And I was super excited for this movie, and I saw it, and I gotta say, I definitely enjoyed it. Let's go ahead and talk about some pros and then cons, and then I will give you my rating out of 10. Now, my first positive is the acting performances, especially Robert Pattinson. He absolutely crushes the performance as Mickey. The voice that he uses in this film is so funny, it's so weird. And I just really liked his character, of Mickey being an expendable, which is basically someone that their life essentially doesn't matter. They die and then they just reprint him. And I really liked that first act. Everything was just weird and wacky. We're understanding what an expendable is. We're seeing bodies for Mickey being printed over and over and over again. He's got a bit of a romance going on. A group of humans are going to populate a new planet. Like, everything was just really weird, wacky, crazy, and interesting. But yeah, Robert Pattinson's performance is absolutely fantastic. I also really liked Mark Ruffalo's performance, even though it was basically like a cartoony villain. And the performance was 100% a parody of Donald Trump. Some people might even say that he was impersonating him. And it was really crazy because we've seen a lot of Trump over the last few months or year, and some of the mannerisms and the way he was talking and everything definitely reminded me of him. Now, some people are going to like that, some people are going to hate that. Some people are going to say, I don't want politics in my movie, this shouldn't be there. But regardless, my bipartisan opinion on this is I like the performance of this cartoony villain because I thought it fit with Act 1 and 2 with this crazy, wacky world that Mickey is living in. Yes, it was a little over the top, but honestly it fit with the comedy that they were going for in this film, so I liked his performance overall. I thought the chemistry between the characters was well done. I thought the ship was well done as well. We got to explore it a bit. I do wish we got to explore it a bit more, but the ship, the aesthetics of it looked interesting. And the aliens in this movie are really interesting as well, and they play a really big part in Act 3. I thought the script was pretty strong. I thought the cinematography was pretty good up until the third act. The third act did feel like I was looking at the same thing for about 30 minutes because it was just all snow and wind and ice. But I really liked Act 1 and 2 cinematography, the set design, costumes, everything was top notch. And that quirky, awkward comedy I thought really worked for the character of Mickey and the other characters that he was interacting with. And the story was good. I know I haven't said that yet, but I've kind of described it already in the review so far. The story is interesting, it's unique, and I really liked it. A man who has a lot of debt tries to escape some loan sharks, signs up to be an expendable, goes to space, and goes to this crazy planet with aliens. Like, that's interesting. But now on to some of my negatives. Now, I gotta say, my biggest negative is the third act. That's where the movie kind of fell apart for me. Everything in Act 1 and 2 was so good, so tight and well knit. Everything was just working for me, but Act 3 just felt very generic and formulaic. It honestly kind of felt like a Netflix movie finale, in terms of quality. Like, you could definitely tell there was a dip after Act 1 and 2 when we hit Act 3. It's basically all outside in the snow and the wind, everything looks the same. The visual flair was just lost in my opinion, and the movie just felt very, very basic. The aliens become super important in Act 3. Now, for some people that might work, for some people like myself it might not. But there was just a lot of story happening and a lot of things that needed to be tied together, and I don't think it was very successful at the end. I still enjoyed Act 3, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's unwatchable, it's terrible, whatever, no, it was still good, but you could definitely tell that it was a step down in terms of quality. It was just predictable and formulaic in my opinion. And in that third act, I would say the pacing suffered as well. It felt very, very long, and this movie is only, I believe, 2 hours and 17 minutes long, but that third act really dragged. And another thing I just thought of is, like, why didn't we explore the planet a little bit more, we go to this planet called Niflheim, and we don't really get to see much of it. Like, we go to a cave, and we look at some snow, and that's about it. So I would have liked to explore the whole environment on this new planet a little more. Maybe we see some other species along with the aliens that you guys have seen in the trailers. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this movie. It was definitely a good watch, and I highly recommend to go check it out in theaters. But for me, personally, that third act just didn't really work as well as Act 1 and 2 did. Bong Joon-Ho has delivered another really good movie, it's just I don't think it's as good as some of his other films like Parasite. So with that being said, now let's go on to my rating out of 10. I'm going to give Mickey 17 a 7.5 out of 10. I think it's a really good movie, it's just I think it could have been a lot better if that third act was as good as Act 1 and 2. It was really cool seeing all these different versions of Robert Pattinson's Mickey and the way that they all died and everything, and then the dynamic between Mickey 17 and 18 I thought was really well done. It's a fun movie, you know, there's romance, there's comedy, there's a lot of interesting ideas explored in this kind of film. It's well directed, it's well acted, everything is solid, it's just that third act. It's just bugging me, man. That third act, if it was as good as Act 1 and 2, I was so ready to give this movie like an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10, but I just didn't like Act 3 that much, so that's why it's getting a 7.5. So that's my thoughts on Mickey 17. Like I said earlier, I definitely recommend to go check it out in theaters. I think you will enjoy it. And if you're someone that's already seen it, let me know what your rating out of 10 is down below in the comments. Stay tuned for more reviews.